I'm making a 1v4 multiplayer slasher game in Unreal Engine. It features 4 survivors disguised as mannequins trying to escape against a monster hunting them down, while also trying to blend in with other mannequins in a factory to avoid being noticed by the monster. The monster's job is to eliminate all the survivors before they can complete their objectives or stall them until they run out of time. Before I continue working on the game, I'd like to take a quick recap to show you guys how I got this far. I started by creating a new project. I started with a third-person template as I feel like it would be good for the game I'm trying to create. It comes with a third-person camera and basic character movement already set up. Next, I made this quick mannequin model in Blender and imported him into Unreal Engine. I rigged the mannequin using the Rigify add-on in Blender. Then I got to work on the 5 idle poses that the mannequins can swap between during the game. The current scene has so much in it, so I created a new level. I quickly added some lighting and a skybox into the scene. Once I got the character into the scene, I was feeling pretty good with what I had, so I moved on. To get swapping between poses working, I created an int value in the character class, which basically loops through every time the player presses a specific key and resets at the end of the loop. I also had to make sure that this replicates to the server, as this is a multiplayer game, and I would like to get as much of the code working with multiplayer as soon as possible. This pose index value is then put in the anime blueprint, and based on that I can choose which animation to play. Then I got to work on the walking and running animations for the character, and brought them into the engine. To get running working, I just increase the player's movement speed every time they press the left shift, and decrease it when they let go of the button. The next thing I wanted to work on was adding doors into the game. So I made this door model in Blender using some cubes, and added some quick textures on it. To get it working, I made it so that the door slides open whenever a player gets close enough to it, and shuts down when they get too far. To make sure that this works with multiple players, I created an array of actors that keeps track of how many players are within range of the door, and removes them from the list when they get too far away. The door will stay open as long as at least one player is close enough to it. This should prevent problems where the door closes if someone leaves, even if another player is still within range of the door. The animation of the door is done using a timeline component by playing it forward or backward depending on if the door needs to be opened or closed. Here's what this looks like in the game. The speed that a door opens is controlled by a curve that I can change in the editor. I started working on an enclosed area so I could better visualize how the doors would look in an actual scene. I used Unreal Engine's BSP brushes to block out some simple rooms and added some lighting. After about an hour or two, this is what I had. This room here is the main area. I added a material to the floor and these lights that I made in Blender to the ceiling. If we head through these set of doors, we enter the next open area, which has 2 doors that lead into smaller rooms. It also has these stairs leading up into this room here. The doors on these smaller rooms have these scanners that survivors need to press in order to open the door. They have these collision boxes on them that notice when the player presses a button while in their range. I also added this little pop-up that appears when you get close enough to the scanner. I added these locked doors with a card swiper on them that require a keycard to open. I created the keycard in Blender, then added some collision and logic for picking it up. As long as the player is holding the item, they can unlock the door. I added this swipe animation they play when they do this. I plan to use these locked doors as objectives later on. Next, I wanted to work on the other mannequins that will be scattered around the map. These guys will spawn playing one of the 5 idle poses. To make their model, I converted the player's idle pose into a static mesh, and repeated this for the other 4 poses. This way I can easily change which pose the mannequin is playing. I'm spawning the mannequins inside of the game mode class at the start of the game. It picks a random point on the map to spawn it and gives it a random rotation. I'm also calling some other checks to make sure that the mannequins don't spawn too close to each other. This is what the first test looked like. You'll notice that the mannequins are pretty evenly spaced out. This is what it looked like once I got the mannequins spawning with random poses. The next thing I did was add presets that the mannequins could spawn in. I gave each preset a random chance of spawning, with single sets having the highest chance of being picked. Here's the final result. I was pretty happy with how the mannequins were spawning, so it was time to move on. I spent a lot of time working on the monster model in Blender. I used the Rigify add-on to rig the mesh and imported him into Unreal. I created a new character class and added movement. I also changed the camera perspective to first person. I went back into Blender to create the walking and running animations. These included strafing animations for moving left and right. For the first person mesh, I just duplicated the model and deleted the geometry that I didn't need. I also added animations for idling and running. This is how it's looking in the game so far. Next up was adding the swing mechanic. Now when the player presses left click, they play a swing animation. If they hold it down, they perform a lunge. It does a check to see if the player hit anything. Missing a swing slows the player down for a short duration, and hitting a mannequin destroys it. To get the survivors taking damage, I created an enum for their 3 health states. If they get hit, they go down a state. Here's what that looks like in the game. Each monster will have 3 abilities, one for movement, patrol, and slowdown or detection. I made the icons for these inside of Inkscape. The monster's first ability is called Dark Phase. After channeling for a bit, the monster enters a state where they cannot see the mannequins. While in this mode, the monster gains a massive increase in movement speed, and is able to see the task that was most recently worked on by the survivors. It lasts a maximum of 10 seconds before exiting the mode. I added some UI that shows the progress of the channel, and an animation that plays when we use the ability. I also added a bar beside the icon that shows the remaining duration of the ability. It currently has a cooldown of about 27 seconds, but this will probably change once I add the other abilities and start balancing the character. That's all I have to show you guys for now, but expect another video soon. Thanks for watching and have a good day.